Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scouts. Today it's all about Sky Sports Fantasy Football. There is £50,000 up for grabs for the winner. My name is Joe and joining me ahead of Game Week 28's fixtures is Luke. Luke, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, Joe. Not bad at all. Bit of a fire sale on Man City assets for me over the weekend,
Yeah,
which
me
I'm sure
too.
it was for you and for many. So yeah, didn't quite net as many points as I hoped it would, but
No.
hopefully set up now for
Yeah.
quite a while. As long as we can avoid some injuries.
I
Yeah.
know. My mind, I hadn't really planned to really jettison those City players, but then the more I looked at the fixtures and the lack of their fixtures and the good assets coming up, and of course we had some news about some future fixtures as well. I just sort of made sense. It felt a bit weird getting rid of good, solid assets like John Stones and Cancelo, but you know, hey ho. Those,
Mine wasn't far off of that actually. I think a lot of players had planned this like quite
mm,
well, and I had looked at it slightly, but because I had less transfers, I was like, I'm just going to ride it out. But then when you actually see it in the cold light of
yeah,
day, that Man City have
yeah.
got, much fewer games, and then obviously all the talk is rotation. Then you think out of those fewer games, are they going to play like 70% of them? So really, we just have to hope that they don't manage to outscore the players we've brought in those few games, which, as you've just said, with Man City, it's always possible. So it doesn't feel right to remove the best players from the best team in the game.
Yeah.
But logically on paper, it does make some sense. So let's see if it works.
Okay, well, let's before we have a look at our teams and what that fire sale has done, and also the coming fixtures and captains and your community questions. Have a look at the latest Tier Two and Man of the Match stars. So we've got Shaw, Target, Kante, McNeil, Smith Rowe, Welbeck, Ian Atcho. So I mean, all hugely low-owned players, and two I mentioned here. Jota, who I am very keen on, and I got in my B team, but we're not so interested in B teams. But I pointed out on social media that he's still in his Wolves shirt according to Sky, so really up to date there. So some might be thinking they're getting a Wolves asset if they're a bit behind the times. And the other man of the match I want to mention is Bernardo Silva, whose mum appears to have done this. So we've had Romeo's mum doing the man of the match, and Bernardo Silva's mum has been at it there. So I don't know how that happened. I did notice that he'd done a couple of good runs, a couple of good dribbles on the match of the day highlights, but
This seems like a good point to talk about it. We have spoken about it before. They just need to scrap these man of the matches. It just brings disrepute into it. I'll be honest. I thought Bernardo Silva was great in the game. I thought he was really, really good.
yeah,
But he was one of a number of people who were good, and he got subbed off in the 67th minute. So didn't play in the last 20 minutes or so, and on all these sort of who scored, FOTMob, all these rating sites, he's one of the lower rated
yeah,
players overall. Fair enough. I mean, that we're not basing it on stats, so okay, fair enough. You've chosen him because you thought he was good. But the really annoying thing was, is the reporter has literally written in the report the reason he's given it to him, or part of the reason, was because he set up the goal from the free kick
and he
for
didn't.
Stones, but he didn't. No, it was Cancelo. So I appreciate, and you're a journalist, obviously, Joe, and you write things and articles, and obviously, if he's writing it, trying to get it out for when the game
Yeah,
finishes or within the last 10 minutes, you have to question how much they're actually looking at the screen because they're probably typing, looking up, typing.
he's just got the wrong
Um,
player. Have you?
yeah, so I mean, it's just really, really bad,
You have
isn't
to.
it? Because if he hadn't have mentioned that was part of the reason why he gave him for man of the match, you could almost shrug your shoulders and go, "Oh, okay,
Mm,
fair enough." I mean, I wouldn't have picked him, but it's not the worst award we've ever had.
yeah,
He was half decent, but yeah, it just brings it into disrepute. I
yeah,
think because I obviously when I've been involved in Sky for a long time, and the thing with Sky is they have a different person in charge quite often. They sort of have like 1 or 2 years, and then they generally move them on to other
mm,
areas. So it's kind of it's good because you kind of build up a relationship and what the community wants, what we're looking for the game. You might even assisted them with various things, and you sort of work out the relationship, and then suddenly they're gone, and it's a new person, and you have to
yeah.
work that all again. So it's kind of frustrating. So the last person that was in charge was very keen on changing the man of the match
Ooh,
to using a FOTMob or who scored or whatever site and just basing it on ratings. At least they can brush the
yeah,
shoulder and go, look, that's
yeah,
who gave it. We can't really argue then. I might not like it that way, but that's what he was keen to do. However, there's a new person now, so whether they'll follow that up or not,
Well,
or whether they'll
hopefully. I
completely
mean,
scrap it.
I mean, what a way! I mean, if you're, I mean, yeah, as a journalist, if you make a mistake, most things are online these days, so you can correct them, and then you note you've made a mistake and move on and admit to it. But for this reporter to make that mistake of muddling up two prominent players and then compounding it by basing another decision on a fantasy game where there are lots of very, very engaged managers. You cannot breathe in the Sky without a whole community wanting to know what is happening. Why are you breathing in that way? And did you breathe? And will that breath get a man of the match? So it's really it's yeah, as you said. I mean, you can't add any more. It's a
No.
sorry state of affairs. Let's hope whoever is in charge of the Sky game at the moment addresses that.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting they're doing this, but the way it is at the moment, it is open to abuse. At the end of the day, the man of the match person is just like a. They don't even necessarily work for Sky. They just do articles for them. If you know what I mean, they're contracted, so to speak, or whatever. And there's nothing to say. Maybe he's my mate. I can ring him up and go, make sure Bernardo Silva gets the man of the match.
Yeah,
Now, I'm
well,
not suggesting they are
no,
doing it, but you don't know if they are or not. So
no,
it's open to
no
it's open to
transparency.
scrutinisation. Exactly.
They used to have it in Fantasy Premier League. There was a guy at Birmingham who got who got the 3 bonus
Charlie,
points.
no, Ferguson.
Yeah, Barry Ferguson. Was it Barry
Yeah.
Ferguson? Yeah,
Yeah, he used to get bonus points just for turning up
yeah,
every single week. Yeah.
yeah, and he'd get 3 points every match just for turning up. And you just go, why is this happening? I mean, I know it's only Birmingham, but for God's sake, there surely
Yeah.
must be someone better in this match every match. But anyway, I think it transpired that Barry Ferguson's mum was in charge of that, so
And
she
then
got
Charlie Adams' mum took over
yeah,
someone. So
yeah, she
whatever.
got sacked. Charlie Adams' mum took over, and now we've got Bernardo Silva's mum in Sky. Let's move on. Passing tier 2: Shaw, Evans, Wan-Bissaka, Sionchu, Fafana, Fred, and Tielemans. What's interesting about this is there are some nice alternatives for Manchester United, but some Leicester assets. Leicester have good fixtures coming up towards the end, and not a lot of Leicester assets in people's teams. Those that have been doing well recently. So yeah, in one of my B teams, I've got Tielemans. I'm really enjoying having him because he's getting, as we see, passing
Yeah.
tier 2, and he's got a goal in him. Sionchu is interesting as well.
Yeah, Tielemans has looked really good in recent weeks. This is what Leicester do, though, isn't it? They look great, and then they suddenly look awful. I think people did target them, and then the main guys got injured in Madison and Barnes, and that was part of the problem. I bought Barnes in, and he got injured straight away, so that was annoying. But I did for a long time actually before this Sheffield United game weigh up getting either Soyuncu and Fofana in because I thought it's probably a 10-pointer, which it turned out to be for both of them, I think. But for me, I wasn't sure. They're playing a back three at the moment with Evans, Soyuncu, and Fofana, and we all know that they can switch to a back four. Now, because of those injuries they've got, maybe they won't. Maybe I overthought it. But I didn't know who to target out of those three because if they do switch to the back four, who is it that drops out? Fofana's been excellent for most of the season, but Soyuncu was injured and he was clearly first choice in the previous season. You know, and Evans is their sort of stalwart, who I think probably is now the worst one out of the three, but I don't think that Brendan Rodgers necessarily sees it that way.
No.
So it was a little bit of guesswork. It's like, you know, if it changes, I could suddenly have a player who's not playing in my team, so I didn't want to risk it. But if it continues as it is, and there's not much time to actually correct it, I might have to go there because these passing centre backs, you know, I'm a massive fan, and these guys look along with Chelsea, these guys look like the next ones to replace our City defenders, really.
Yeah, definitely. Tackles tier 2: Cancelo. Goodbye, Cancelo. Tierney, Lallana, Hayden, Neves, Rodri, and Anguissa were some of those I picked out there. So not much going on. Saves tier 2: Dubravka, Allison, Meslier, and Ramsdale. And Dubravka's still there. He was the top save merchant last year. So
He got something like 60 points from saves last year.
yeah, Newcastle do have good fixtures, and I say that. I mean, Newcastle are bad, but sometimes that save meister in a team which could get the odd clean sheet could be, an interesting differential.
Well, it's like Meslier, who's also in that list. Allison, Meslier, Ramsdale are also there. And Meslier, who I got rid of at Overhaul, has pretty much got saves tier 2 every week since, I think.
Yeah.
So might be close to my keeper in the end.
Not many in shots tier two. Vardy and Iheanacho. So there's your Leicester options again, and Havertz as well. So I'm still monitoring him. Interesting, very interesting Havertz. So if he's not only got a goal in him, playing as a number 9 potentially, and he's getting the shots tier along with that, what would come with that number 9 role. Interesting, lots of interesting assets. The other one I'm particularly interested in, Jota, and I'm weighing up a move of getting rid of Salah for him, and it frees up some money. The thing with Salah is on a day when he's a captaincy option, you tempted to captain him if there's no Fernandes, for example, around that day, and it's basically 2 points, and I'm sick of that. And it's a way of just taking that temptation away. We don't have a Van Dijk anymore. I'm tempted by Jota in my main team. Let's have a look at some fixtures were announced. So let's have a look at them before we have a look at our teams. And I've gone to the FPL site, so apologies Sky managers for offending you for having the FPL site, but Sky have not yet put the updated fixtures up. So I remember last time they did this, and I got into a terrible muddle with them trying to piece them together from the Sky side. I'm just going to FPL now. So luckily the fixtures are aligned. So these are for game week 30 and 31. It's early April, and these show that some of the one single match day and some of the limited days. So the first on the game week 30 on Saturday, we got Chelsea, West Brom, Leeds, Sheffield United, Leicester, Man City, Villa, Fulham. So some nice options there, and it compounds the need for me personally to get a Chelsea asset in. And then moving on to the Sunday, Southampton, Burnley, Newcastle, Spurs. So obviously Kane is looking good that day. Arsenal, Liverpool. This is why I'm so after a blank fixture for Salah, he comes straight into that, and I don't know what he will do, and I don't want to captain him that day because Fernandes is playing Brighton at home. I want to captain him that day. So Salah, off you go. And then on the Monday, Everton against Palace and Wolves against West Ham. And as we'll see with our teams, both you and I have got in a Wolves and West Ham player. So with this in mind, I presume. And then moving on to game week 31, we got Fulham and Wolves, hence a Wolves player coming in. And then we got City against Leeds. So I'll be looking at, and it's the first match as well. So I'll captain my City player that's left that day. Liverpool against Villa. This is where Jota might come in for me. Palace against Chelsea. Hopefully I've got Azpilicueta in. And then moving down, Burnley, Newcastle on the Sunday. West Ham, Leicester. Spurs against Manchester United and Sheffield United against Arsenal. That's quite a tricky day, that one.
Yeah.
What do you think for a captaincy that day? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? I mean, as we just saw, Leicester versus Sheffield United, and they absolutely smashed them, and they've just lost their manager. I mean, the Arsenal asset is clearly the best one on that day for me. I mean, Aubameyang, we're not sure 100% who plays, but I think it is probably likely he would. So, I mean, if I had the option, that is a day to make up some ground there, because people like me are not going to bring in an Arsenal people who don't have enough transfers. I know they've got good fixtures, so you could look at it, but it feels a little bit vanity, and then you're kind of trusting him to play every week, where I suppose it's not that much of a problem when you're comparing him to the likes of Salah, who are doing absolutely nothing. But obviously there are other players that are doing pretty good, So I think that's a day for where if you go for Aubameyang, you could be heavily rewarded on that day. For me, I mean, I'll have Bruno Fernandes and Kane. They're playing each other, so maybe one of those. I've got Antonio at home to Leicester. Leicester can be a good side though, so it'll probably default to Kane just because, or Bruno, just because they're obviously great assets, and I hope it's hard to predict result, but you'd expect that both of them would get maybe some bonus points at least out of that. So
the other point with Arsenal is they're embroiled in Europa League action. Currently are. So there could be rotation, especially with the likes of Aubameyang, who despite his tardiness for training, he's still the first choice striker there. Saka's fitness one to monitor. Once again, I'm not sure any Arsenal player is guaranteed minutes in what, on the face of it, is probably their easiest game in a clutch of games. So
Yeah.
this is the game you want to rotate, I would imagine.
The thing is, it's like on that weekend. So you just mentioned on Saturday the 10th of April. Let's say you're sat with Salah in your team, like quite a lot
Yeah,
of us are. They're at home to Villa on the Saturday. Now you could move to Aubameyang for that game against Sheffield United, assuming he plays,
yeah.
and that's the risk, isn't it? 7 o'clock after all the games,
Mm-hmm.
and then I know we don't have the fixtures for the rest of the games, but if you look down them, Arsenal are then home to Fulham, they're home to Everton,
Yeah,
then they're away to Newcastle, home to West Brom. That's a nice little run, isn't it? And then it goes to Chelsea, and then they've got Palace and Brighton. So Chelsea's probably the only tough game they've got left out of that run. So a move from Salah to Aubameyang at that point could be pretty good. The problem is Salah has also got good games from that point on. So
yeah. But this is why I want to cut my ties with Salah, because I'm what's happened so far. Those who've got rid of Salah in whatever fantasy format, including Sky, and moved on to another player from another team or another Liverpool asset, they reap the rewards, because you're often tempted to captain Salah, and he doesn't, and he's not delivering. That might turn, but meanwhile you might be able to use that money elsewhere, and with the likes of Leicester and Chelsea defenders as well, you're probably going to need a bit of money, I think, coming up soon, and Salah's just not justifying his price tag. Let's move on to that Monday. West Brom against Southampton and Brighton against Everton. So for me, I'm probably going to be keeping hold of Calvert-Lewin. He's got an extra fixture as well coming up at some point. Calvert-Lewin for me looks good.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, so those that are thinking of getting rid of Calvert-Lewin, maybe looking at these fixtures, you might want to hang on to him. For that, both of these Mondays, he's a great option.
That's what I'll be doing. I'll be holding on to him because of those reasons. It does annoy me when this happens, though, that you've got in your mind that you can't. I mean, I didn't necessarily want to get rid of Calvert-Lewin, but a lot of people might have. You want to get rid of a player, and then the fixtures come out, and then you end up holding on to a player because he's got these single days. So Salah was a perfect example recently, playing Wolves. Continuously held on to him myself because he's got the single match day. It makes no sense to remove him, and then he continues to get two for ages. Where if you'd have moved to anyone, even who hasn't got a single match day, you would have benefited. So the thing is, I don't think you can change that approach, because one goal for Salah on that day as captain, and suddenly it was the right move to make, and you don't want to make the swap. So I think we're just going to have to keep Calvert-Lewin and just hope that he starts returning. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone outscores him. So if you want to take the punt, and then on the day, West Brom are playing Southampton on that day, you could obviously just look at the lineups and bring in your favourite Southampton asset. I mean, it depends how many transfers you've got left, but I think that's still an option.
Yeah, definitely. So let's have a look at our teams, because they're a bit different from last week. So let's have a look at your team first. So you've got Martinez in goal, Azpilicueta, Stones and Diaz. So much less City now. Antonio, Neto, Rafinha and Fernandes in midfield. Probably not a midfield you perhaps thought you were going to have at the beginning of the season. Kane, Calvert-Lewin and Salah. Once again, you're a step ahead of me, because you're one player. You're a Rafinha and an Azpilicueta more than I'm. They're the players I'm targeting next. I don't have them at the moment, but so your transfer wise, you must be pretty low. I know you're not going to reveal the exact number, but it must be almost dangerously low soon.
Yeah. I'm taking a risk now, because obviously we don't have fixtures, things can change, but I am definitely at the point now where I'm not making any transfers unless I get some injuries for a long time, which is frustrating because people will be able to catch me up, but it is what it is. My main thing that I had in my mind was that I wanted to get Thiago Silva in for either Calvert-Lewin or Salah at some point, just to double up on the Chelsea defence, but then he had a setback, and I don't really trust any of the others to play, or I trust Rudiger to play. Only missed one, but he doesn't get passing bonus that often compared to the others, so I'm not really that interested. So that's probably the only sort of plan I've got in my mind, possibly the Aubameyang one I talked about, in for Calvert-Lewin or Salah at some point. Just have to hope Antonio's hamstrings last, because that's also a worry. Stones might not play a lot of the games, but I feel like if he's going to play 5 of the games, given how he performs at the moment, it won't make any difference. He'll still somehow manage to get 100 points from those 5 games. So,
looks good. And whereabouts are you in the rankings? Still sort of top
I think I'm 20.
15.
No, I'm not 21st now. I've dropped down a bit. Let me have a look. 28th.
Okay, so still, still in the running. So it's as you said, time to take some risks. So here's my team, which is sort of almost where you're at, but not quite. So I took a, I mean, I thought I just took a Hail Mary on getting Dunk in. I just thought I saw that fixture, the single game day for Brighton, and I thought I'm just going to go for that. And so I got rid of, I think it was Cancelo went for Dunk, and it ended up being my my best transfer I've done recently. So it got me 9 points.
Scoring a goal, unbelievable.
Scoring a goal. So I've got I've got Martinez, Dunk, Vestergaard, Diaz, Ward-Prowse, Antonio, Neto, Fernandes, Kane, Calvert-Lewin, and Salah. My plan with this, so I have 11 transfers left, so I feel okay there. I've moved up a sort of sphere. I'm hovering around the 500 to 600 mark in the rankings when they're updated each day, rather than 900 or so that I was a while ago. So gradually making progress. My plan moves are, even though Southampton's fixtures are good, I'm not sure I want Southampton players, and I like Rafinha's value compared to Ward-Prowse. So I'm going to go for Rafinha, Ward-Prowse out for Rafinha. That gives me a captain, and it gives me arguably Leeds' best player for the duration, perhaps. He's certainly cheap enough for that. Then my plan is to remove Vestergaard for Azpilicueta. And that will leave me with 9 left and 1.6 million in the bank after I've done that. And
yeah,
then
nice healthy position.
And then I don't know. And that's the position I want to be in. I sort of want to be in a don't know position. So I can cope with injuries. I will then have 11 teams covered, but I won't have any Leicester. And that's where I'd be looking to move Dunk on to a Leicester defender, perhaps.
Yeah, so unsure for Fafana. I say that's the one thing I missed out on my plan. That if Thiago Silva thing doesn't work, I'll probably be looking at one of those. I just want to see how it develops a little bit. But yeah, that's great. I think you're in a great position now. I would be very surprised if you don't start flying up the ranks, because there's going to be people like me that know that there's good moves that they want to make, and they're just not going to ignore them and pray. I mean, Dunk is one. Obviously Dunk was a good move this week. I mean, it looks very likely that he's going to hit 10, 20 points.
Yeah.
Although against Newcastle, although they've dropped off on the passing stats because they've sort of switched to a back four recently, but it's Newcastle who are utterly dreadful for giving away passing bonus to the opponent, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it's also, if Dan Burn is injured, they are more likely to go. Well, they switched to 3 at the back with Pascal Gross weirdly at right wing back. Their very cheap striker at left wing back. I mean, basically, we don't know. But if Dunk is an surety to play, so we know where he'll play, and you've got to hope that there'll be some passing bonus there, and he's got a goal in him. And Newcastle, like a lot of the relegation threatened teams, are vulnerable to set pieces, which is where Dunk can shine. I feel quite confident about that, and Salah is. Well, I mean, he's hanging by a thread. I mean, I would like to get rid of him to Jota. I think that will give me a slight advantage. I'm just going to bet that Salah's not going to be that great an asset, even though their fixtures are good. I just don't think he is quite the main man anymore as a fantasy asset. So, and then move on to that, really. Leicester are the ones I want, so hover around, and I quite like the idea of having like 10, 11 from different teams, and getting rid of City has done that, really. Let's have a look at game week 28. So it's quite little, so we can put them all up on the screen. So there's three days, so 3 captaincy chances here. So we've got Fulham, Leeds. You got Rafinha. I'm going to get Rafinha in. Fulham, though, could be interesting. Especially if you haven't got a Wolves asset, because there's a single match day. Would you advocate anyone getting a Fulham asset in if they don't have Leeds or Wolves?
I mean, that Adarabioyo, who we've been talking about a lot at 5.2 million, is the ultimate enabler. Compare him to Salah. He's about a third of the price, and I think he's probably outscored him by about triple points in the last 15 weeks. Yeah, I mean, you could easily move to him. I wouldn't be surprised. Leeds don't really give up passing bonus to anyone, so maybe he'll struggle for that. But he's just a good enabler season long. The only problem I would say is Fulham have got some dreadful games after that, so I wouldn't be expecting to. Have they got dreadful games? I thought they did. Maybe I'm making that up. I'm clicking it through now.
They certainly have a mixture. They don't have.
Yeah,
the
away
best
to Villa, home
run.
to Wolves, that's fine. But then it's the little run after that, isn't it? I think they've got
Yeah,
a bad run at some point. They miss a game,
yeah.
and then they play Chelsea away, Burnley at home. Well, that's not too bad. No, I seem to have made it up. For some reason, I thought they had a worse team than that, a worse fixture list than that. So yeah, I mean, I
They
like that.
they miss a game, don't they? For the but I mean, in Sky terms, they don't miss a game. They just have a game
Yeah,
postponed. So
yeah.
just be aware of that. Um, so moving on, Brighton Newcastle. So for me, it's Dunk. You're going to skip that. Would you recommend a Newcastle asset?
No, I'd love to have Dunk, but if you were going to do it, I think it was probably better
Yeah,
to do it the other week, which most people did and got
yeah,
the goal. Now, I'd say unless you want him long term, if you want him long term from now on, and you think he's a good asset because he is a decent asset, then by all means go for it. But if you're literally bringing him in to captain him versus Newcastle and then looking to ship him out
yeah.
afterwards, I wouldn't risk one game like that. I mean, it's likely to be a 20-pointer, but it could quite easily not be, and then suddenly you'd be cursing your decision. So
Yeah, for me, I mean, obviously got Duncan for his goal. He's going to stick around for a while and then eventually move to a Leicester defender, I think. And I think a lot of people probably do that. A lot of Dunk owners, but bear in mind that Brighton's run-in, whilst Dunk is good for the tiers, and he has got a goal in him, Brighton's run-in is pretty awful. And there's a real risk of some hammerings there. A very, very real risk of a hammering. And you you could end up with minus. So if you're banking on him for a future captain, a bit scary, that thought. Sunday, 21st of March, West Ham, Arsenal, Villa, Tottenham. So this is a bit more like it. Well, Harry Kane for me, but option of Antonio Martinez if I fancied. But for you,
yeah, it'd be Harry Kane.
yeah,
I've got him in. I hope Son's fit, to be honest, because when one of those two seems to miss out, it's not quite the same, is it? And
no,
but it's just play safe on that day. I don't think this is a week where you can really make some moves. Nearly everyone who's engaged or in the top sort of 1,000 will be on, I would imagine, Rafinha or Dallas
yeah,
captain, maybe Bamford if he's there and he's fit. They'll be on Dunk or no one in the Saturday game, I would imagine. And then on Sunday, nearly everyone's going to be on Kane. The ones that are punting might go Aubameyang, and that could work out for him.
yeah.
But apart from that, they're basically the only names you need to worry about this week. I think everyone else looks like they're just going to pick up the odd 2 point and you just roll with whatever you got.
Definitely. Let's move on to some community questions then. So, just having a look on our Twitter feed here. So, Tom Hartnell asked what to do about this Fulham Wolves game, which is coming out, the single match day that we spoke about earlier. He's tempted to move Vestergaard for Anderson for the captaincy. Is that worth it, do you reckon? Yeah, we spoke a bit about Wolves, but do you think that would be worth it if you're a Vestergaard owner and you've got no captain that day?
I suppose it would if you've got no captain that day, but it's just the whole thing of getting a Fulham defender in against Leeds just always feels like it's a bit of a risk because firstly they don't get the passing bonus very often and Leeds are generally pretty good in attack. I know that hasn't been that way of late as much, but they can suddenly, we've seen it quite a lot this season where people start to question Leeds and suddenly they put out a ridiculous performance and score 3 or 4 goals. And Fulham are fighting for their lives, so they're going to have to keep pushing forward and keep going. They can't just sit back. It could work, and Vestergaard and Southampton have been largely atrocious, but their fixture run is so good that I'm not sure switching a cheap defender for another cheap defender will net you enough points for it to be worth a transfer. That's my only concern. Will we be better off using it, say, on an Aubameyang or a Vardy or a Thiago Silva or a Soyuncu over the course of the next 8 games? Probably for me, probably you will.
Yeah.
So I'd be tempted just to sit on Vestergaard. Rather than
that's why I'm a Vestergaard owner and I haven't once considered the move to Dallas or to a Fulham defender here because I want to use that slot for I'm looking at advanced in terms of Chelsea and Leicester defenders really and maybe any other defenders that emerge but But yeah, it's just not really worth it.
No. At this stage, I think you can literally sit down, write out the amount of games left for your player. So let's say Vestergaard, write out the 7 games and just write down a prediction what you think you'll get for each week, including your captains, and then come up with a figure. I don't know, say 50 points,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And then you can do the same for your Fulham defender, write it out, and then see how many you think he might get. And if the gap is only sort of 20 points in your mind, then it's probably not worth it. If it starts to get into the realms of 30 with only 8 weeks, then I'd look at doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, what actually happens compared to what you've written down might be very different, but that's what the game is, isn't it? Predicting the points and hoping you get it. So I would say, only if there's a substantial difference, because Aubameyang, one cap. We haven't got the captain days is the main problem, and there could be several now towards the back end where suddenly you think, well, I need to have Aubameyang for that day, or I need to have a Vardy for that day, and you've wasted it on a Fulham transfer.
Here's a question here from Alex Brown. He's got two transfers left for the season. Okay, that is quite low. If you could only transfer 2 for the rest of the season, who would it be? So it's hard to judge this without knowing who he's already got.
Basically, the 2 highest scorers from now to the end of the season, I guess, would be the only ones we would put out.
But also, I think I guess what this throws up is that let's assume he's already got Fernandes and Kane. So if you don't have Fernandes and Kane, just get them in, because you're going to want to captain them a lot and they're going to do well. But I guess it's others. Look at the fixtures. Who's got good fixtures? Liverpool have. I would say if you haven't got a Liverpool asset, Jota might be an intriguing one, I think. But I don't know. What do you reckon?
I think Azpilicueta would be top of my list.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's close to the top scorer from now to the end of the season, even though their last few games are quite tricky, if I remember. I think they got Man City, Arsenal, Leicester in a little block towards the end. Yeah, 35, 36, 37. They've got that. But they've got West Brom at home, Palace, Brighton, West Ham, Fulham in the next 5 games. Obviously, they blanked this week. In those 5 games, you could quite easily get 10 points a game, if not more. Because the thing with Azpilicueta is that he gets the tackles as well as the passing quite often. He hasn't the last couple of games, but he's got a history of doing it. So he's almost like, these Laportes and stuff who generally get the 10 point. And Azpilicueta has also got that chance of getting a 12 or a 14 pointer.
Yeah, definitely. He's by far the best asset from Chelsea and Sky at the moment, and that's why he's my top target at the moment. Eric Klump asked for Brighton punts. Well, I mean, if you haven't, as you said, I mean, I guess if you haven't got one, I wouldn't bother. To be honest, their running's not great. They've just got one single day up, match day, they might have a 1 or 2 more. Lewis Dunk or no one. If you are a risk taker, Trossard or Gross might get you something, but I doubt it compared to the others. So
yeah,
I'll probably just leave them.
No, gun to my head, I'd probably pick Gross, but the only I like Trossard as a player. I love watching him, but you only have to click on his name in Sky and then go look at his last sort of 10, 15 points. It reads basically like Salah. I mean, I know he scored this week and got a shots tier, but it's generally a 2-pointer or a 1-pointer for months on end. Despite him, the problem in the past was Trossard wasn't even 100% nailed, and we always thought he'd be a great asset once he was nailed. Turns out that's a load of rubbish. Generally, he's not that good of an asset, even if he plays, apparently. So for me, it would simply be Gross, because he can occasionally get a tier bonus, like passing or tackles, which he's actually pretty good at. And then obviously he's on penalties, it seems. So you could get a jammy one there. But again, if you click him on and look through his past history, doesn't score enough points.
No, it's not. It's Dunk or no one, I would say. I don't think Brighton punts exist in Sky at the moment. You might get the odd goal, you might get the odd tier, but compared to the other players, Chelsea's, your Leicester's, City even, you're just not gonna get there. Leon Hobson asks preferred Leeds coverage. You've already got Rafinha. I'm going to get Rafinha. I'm planning to just keep Rafinha in there because he's cheap. 6.8, best Leeds player. I prefer to go that than a defender with Leeds because their fixtures aren't great. So if they're going to get a goal, I don't know. Is there anyone else apart from Rafinha?
I'm just going to say Rafinha. I think he's the best pick.
Yeah.
I think Dallas is more than capable of doing just as well. But I still think Rafinha is the best because midfielders aren't great in this game, and Rafinha is one of the ones that fills that slot perfectly. Whereas defenders are generally pretty good, and Dallas uses a defender slot. So just on that basis alone, I prefer having Rafinha as a Leeds coverage because there's so few midfielders that I particularly want. It's getting a little bit better, but there's still. I mean, I've got Antonio, Neto, and Rafinha in my team. It's quite conceivable those guys get 2 points for the next 3 or 4 games all in a row. I mean, I'm prepared that it could happen. It's not like I just love these passing centre backs that get this 5 even when they fail, and they're not those guys. So.
No, I mean, it could be that Wolves. It could be that Cody becomes the better asset. It could be Bolly becomes better than Neto. It could be that Cresswell or Dawson outscore Antonio. It could also be that Lingard is the one in Sky rather than
I think Antonio. A lot would have maybe moved to him if they didn't have West Ham coverage. I mean, I was thinking about it, but obviously he didn't play against Man United, so it didn't make any sense to get him in.
I would just get that, and I genuinely think if Lingard's going to do well, West Ham will do well, and the guy up top will do well, and that'll be Antonio. So I just think get one in. But yeah, I mean it's a bit weird, like suddenly gone for kind of quite flair midfielders who are bargains. Whereas Sky's often been about just getting those Azpilicuetas, just get 5 Azpilicuetas in, and
it has. But the actual real footballers mimic this. I think someone was saying that forwards this season. I think for the last sort of 2 months or something, forwards have just been utterly dreadful in Sky and in FPL and everything. Outside of Kane, there's literally been hardly anyone who you can rely on, and then midfielders as well haven't been great. Someone, I think it was. Pep Talk was saying something like since game week 19, the highest score each week in FPL, which kind of translates to Sky, has been a defender something like 11 times out of the last 19 weeks, and midfielders have picked up the other 5 or something like that. And in Sky, that's even heightened because you obviously get the passing bonus and stuff, which you don't get in FPL. So I would argue that it's probably been a defender nearly every week in Sky.
Yeah. Definitely. But yes, we move on. We are where we are with Sky. It's an odd season. Let's get through it. You can win it. I can get in the top 100. These are the aims. Well, I say you can win it. Can you?
I don't think I can win it now. I mean, the lead is 80 points clear of me, and over the last few weeks, I've kind of gone occasionally to about 50, 60 points, and then I've gone back to 100, then I've gone 56, and I'm now back at 80, which I was about 2 months ago. So I can't make any ground on him. It's constantly 80 points, probably because he's got pretty much the exact same team as me, apart from maybe a couple of names.
Okay, and obviously he perhaps hasn't got his own video where you can watch and you can understand what his moves are.
I'm sure he's more concerned about the guys in the top 5, but no, it's not the best decision to just lay your cards on the table, is it?
Before we go, just mention the members area in Fantasy Football Scout, full of useful stats and information for Sky managers and FPL managers alike. If you have liked this video, do press like and also subscribe. That means you can keep up to date with all our latest videos and podcasts wherever you hear them. Do check out the website for details. In the meantime, Luke, thanks so much for your time, and good luck with your week in Sky.
Cheers, Joe. See you on the next one, mate.